And we're pleased to be joined on the Western Pizza guest hotline by Ticat play-by-play voice. Welcome back to the show, Rick Zamperin. We got you in week 2 when the Riders went to Hamilton 28-23, but it seems ever since that game, the Ticats have taken off and been one of the hottest teams in the CFL. Is there a simple answer to what happened to the Ticats and what let them rattle off 6 straight wins?
I'm not sure there's a simple answer, and thanks for having me back on the show. I think the answer is they just started making a few more plays. And I know that's kind of cliche, but that's what a lot of the players and the coaching staff have been saying. Weeks 1 and 2 in Calgary and then at home against the Rough Riders, they were there in both games, and there were 3, 4, 5 plays in each of them, as is usually the case, that the Stamps and the Riders certainly made to solidify W's in those 2 weeks. And from then on, things just seemed to click. Hamilton got turnovers. They scored points off those turnovers. Bo Levi and the offense found another gear, which was kind of interesting. Kenny Lawler really exploded onto the scene. And then secondary guys like Keandre Smith and Tim White, just from an offensive perspective, had amazing games when Lawler was being double-teamed. The defense was not only creating turnovers, but then the offense was taking those turnovers and scoring some points as well. The offense has been lethal in the red zone, and special teams has been outstanding. Isaiah Wooden, unfortunately, is hurt with a shoulder injury, but he's been a revelation in his rookie season. Mark Leggio was perfect up until last week against the BC Lions. Punting the football, they've been great. Coverage unit has been awesome. That's why they won 6 in a row up until last week against the Lions.
The one word I like to describe it as in watching is that, especially on offense, everybody looks comfortable with everybody else.
Yeah, great word. I mean, and that says something because, this team added a few pieces. They lost David Beard, the center, to the Elks. Coulter Woodmansey, who was primarily in a backup role throughout his young career in the CFL, moved from that backup position to starting center. They get Liam Dobson from the Bombers. Brandon Reverberg is there at the left guard position. He's that, stabilizing force. The 2 tackles have been great. Barrow, Bordner, Murray came in and then unfortunately got hurt. That offensive line has been the biggest key, I think, to the offense's success because a much smarter man than me told me years ago that your offense is only good as your offensive line. And this O-line has allowed the least amount of sacks and has created some time for Bo Levi. And when he doesn't have that time, he has found a fountain of youth to hit that circle button on his remote, spin out of trouble, and find a target downfield. It's been great to see.
It's funny you mentioned Revenberg. I would have loved to seen him. Let's say he was a 10-year-old kid playing football. I bet you he played aggressively as a 10-year-old in minor football because every play all in. I love plays when he's 15 yards down the field, manhandling somebody somehow in some play, whether or not it went to his side or not. I love a guy like that. He's got to be one of the clubhouse glue guys too, right?
Without a doubt. I mean, here's a guy who, in the off season has people at his house. They're studying film at 5 in the morning. They're not practicing until 11 Eastern time. This is a group led by Revenberg and really Coulter Woodmansey and Liam Dobson, the 3 Canadians up front, say, hey guys, we got to get on the same page and quickly. And they did that in training camp and certainly in the first few games of the season. Now they've really found their groove. And him in particular, Revenberg, perennial East All-Star, up for lineman of the year, it seems, year in and year out. Just a road grader. Like, he's pancaking guys. He's never stopping until the whistle blows, and it's awesome to see.
Bo Levi's reinvention. It was about this time last year where things were kind of coming off the rails with him and Scott Milanovic, and Bo was going to be out of the CFL, never to be heard from. And then a year later, reinvented. Renaissance is another word that gets used. The new Bo 2.0, all of that. We're watching it from 10,000 feet. You're up close. How neat is it to see the new Bo in action up close?
It's awesome to see, and not just because, we're part of the Ticats audio network and we're, rooting for the home team, but, here's a guy who's way on the wrong side of 30. He's 35. He's in his 13th, 14th season in the CFL, and last year at this time gets benched because simply he was turning the ball over too much. And head coach and offensive coordinator Scott Milanovic said, his number one trait as a quarterback, he wants accuracy. Wants his quarterback to be accurate, wants his quarterback to move the chains, obviously eventually get into the end zone. And Bo was not doing that. And so they went with Taylor Powell. And unfortunately for Powell, he got hurt in his first start, and Bo gets back in. And, the weeks after that, Bo and the offense caught fire. And, I remember asking him towards the later stages of last season, like, what happened after you got benched that, the light bulb went off, or the fire, that was smoldering for so long kind of reignited into this inferno of offensive excellence. And basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, he said, that was kind of the moment where I realized that this could be it. Like, this is my shot to get back to that elite status, to get back to how I was slinging it in Calgary for all those years, to get back to that future Hall of Famer kind of status. And he's found it again. And I think improving the footwork kind of really helped him. In the offseason, after he got hurt in his first year in Hamilton, he only played 6 games. He had the broken leg, and an assortment of injuries. And I think Marcellus Bowman, the strength and conditioning coach, and Bo got on the same page. And in that 2023/2024 offseason, he really kind of metamorphosized in his strength and conditioning and has come back even better, even stronger. So it's been fun to watch for a guy who we all thought, okay, that might be it, come back and prove everyone wrong. And I think since his benching, he's been the best quarterback in the Canadian Football League.
I would 100% agree. On the Kenny Lawler front, prize free agent signing, I'm sure his agent had 9 offers in front of him. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to chat about this, about the why. Is it just money? I don't know if Hamilton's paying the most. Is it money in quarterback? Is it money quarterback coach? What was the rationale? Because it looks like a great move at the moment. Like, he picked the right spot. Any insight as to the Kenny going from the Bombers to the Ticats?
I think there's a couple things, and he alluded to one in particular that I'll get to in a moment. But certainly the money doesn't hurt. He's one of the highest paid receivers in the CFL, and deservedly so. He's a game breaker. He's a guy who can get in the end zone. He can look at all his intangibles and all his skills, from catch radius to just being an awesome guy in the locker room. I think first and foremost, he has a child who has needs in terms of, autistic representation, in terms of education and care and whatnot. And he looked at the services that were in and around Hamilton, notorious for, not only being steel town and gritty, but, a healthcare and education kind of hub for Southern Ontario. And I think that was one of the deciding factors among many, that he looked to say, this is not only for me, but this is also a move that my family can kind of take advantage of. And I think, aside from what was happening off the field, or what is happening off the field, he looked at this situation, I think, very similar to what Bo Levi did a few years ago. Leaving Calgary at that time and looking across the landscape and thinking, if I go to Hamilton, I haven't won a cup since 1999. I want to be one of those guys that brings that trophy back to the Hammer. And I think that kind of was a bit of an allure for a guy like Kenny Lawler as well.
Hey, last interview I said it. This interview you said it. You brought up 1999. I didn't do that. I stopped counting. There's bigger things. Rick, we can't go in Forest. You'll get fined all sorts of money. I wasn't going to be dwelling on the fact that it's been 26 years since it's been a Grey Cup win in Hamilton. And this could be the year. I know when we chatted with you last time, I was on and on about how Katsantonis just being without Atunde Adeleke, who I thought was an undersized heavy hitter at safety. Is he the most feared safety in the league? Because to me, he's proved it so far through 9 games this season. Don't go over the middle, because something's coming your way and you may not like it.
Yeah, he's a lumberjack out there. He's going to lower the boom time and time again, and he's a guy who's able to pick his spots as well. He's not getting flagged a lot. In fact, the Ticats last week did not have 1 penalty in the game. I can't recall a CFL team that achieved that statistic. But he's a guy who kind of sets the tone back there in terms of the physicality. He's got great leadership skills. He's been in that position for 5 years now. And when you have others around him too, like a Deshaun Amos, who's won a Grey Cup, a Jamal Peters, who's hoisted the trophy as well. Jonathan Moxey is so versatile. Destin Talbot in the secondary. Got a lot of talent there. And I think that allows Katsantonis a little bit of free range to do some of the things that he's really good at. And I think defensive coordinator Britt Monson is kind of keying in on a lot of the great qualities that a lot of the players have, including Stavros. So he's fit in more often than not in terms of setting the tone, creating some turnovers, offering the big hit, creating that fear factor in the middle, and a guy who's just easy to cheer for because he's got a great attitude as well.
I think if you're a football fan, it doesn't matter if you're, just a second. Hold on a sec. Oh, there we are. Let's see. Live radio, folks. Sometimes phones going off. That's a fine. That's a fine, right? Rick, in football, is that a fine if your phone goes off in a meeting room?
Absolutely. That or 10 push-ups. Pick your poison.
All 10 at the same time? Are we talking? I don't have much of an off-season regimen. If you're a football fan, it doesn't matter if you're a Ticat fan. If you're just a football fan and you have a conscience, you felt bad for Tim White last week in overtime when he's fighting for extra yards against the Lions. The fumble happens, and BC, and that's what I hate about overtime like that. Just the gimme. It's like, play 10 minutes. Let Hamilton try and come back and respond to that. That was a good football game. It was entertaining. Both teams battling back and forth. I hated it to see it end that way. You probably maybe lean a little on my side, as that's a tough way to lose a football game.
Absolutely. And, you got to feel for Tim. There was good and bad in that play. Good that, he's trying to fight for yardage. He's trying to make a play. But in the other sense, it's bad because he has to know the situation as well. It's overtime. A turnover is an absolute, you just can't do it, especially in that part of the field where even if he goes down, they get another shot, whatever the case is, they're going to score some points, you would think. And so I credit the competitor inside Tim White to say, I want to get in the end zone. I'm going to get a first down here, or make get more yards. That's what the game is all about. In the other sense, he's got to know the situation and take his lumps when they come.
Yeah, that was tough because I'm like, Hamilton wins 7 straight. They come in here, and 6 out of 7 is not bad. So they're coming into Taylor Field on a heater. What are from week 2 to now? What are sort of those things that everybody knows? The Riders, their front four is getting pressure, and Corey Mace plays that zone defense. And if everybody says if Bo can be patient and takes what the defense gives them and then go from there, to me, it's the explosiveness of Kenny Lawler, who has always played very well against the Riders, no matter what team he's been on, Bombers, Elks. He has been held in check, as you had mentioned, the past couple of weeks. But this, it doesn't take one 50-50 ball, and it seems like he breaks out and he's on his way. What are you expecting on Saturday out of the Riders?
I'm expecting more of the same. This is a well-oiled machine. They're tough on defense. They are explosive when they want to be on offense. We saw it in the last game against the Ticats. A.J. Ouellette goes 47 yards for a touchdown. Trevor Harris and Keyshawn Johnson pick on Destin Talbert in the fourth quarter and get the game-winning score. Roland Milligan with a pick 6 with a huge play. They just seem to make those big plays throughout the game that turns the tide, gives them momentum, offers them awesome field position, enabling them to put some points on the board or stunt the opposition from, getting back into the game, whatever the case is. They're just a well-coached team. They're at home. They're always tough to play at Mosaic, that's for sure. And the Ticats, it's going to be a tough test for the Ticats to come in here. The one thing is, Hamilton played 3 games in 12 days. That's a tough order for any football team. And I think that even though they lost against BC, they still have wind in their sails because of the way that they played in that game. Offensively, it wasn't a very good first half. The second half was an offensive fireworks show for both teams. And I think there's some room to tighten up, especially on the defensive side of the football. So I'm interested with, seeing how the chess match plays out and how the game begins and then evolves from there.
One of the most impressive things for me watching Hamilton over this past 6-7 week stretch, I've thought, especially since that Rider game, that the defense has gotten a lot better, playing more consistently, playing under Brent Monson's systems. It seems like they're starting. We always knew Bo can easily be Bo and strike quick and put it up there, but it seems like the Hamilton defense, those sort of gotcha plays from the first couple of weeks are getting less and less, and it's a more cohesive unit. And I really think that, and Trevor with such a quick release, but Hamilton's been able to get some pressure and do some things. And you mentioned all the guys in the secondary that are Grey Cup champions and have a pedigree, that the Rider receivers who have played great this year, injury riddled, next man up situation, may have their hands full because it's starting to come together. Because Monson's under that disciple. He's from that Calgary tree as well that Mace came from and all of that and those philosophies and stuff. So that's the interesting match. It's the Mace-Monson sort of clash of the defensive minds I'm looking forward to.
One of the interesting things about the Ticats D in particular is, yes, they get pressure to the quarterback, and we've heard this the last couple of weeks. We're getting pressure, but we're not finishing the job. They're just not getting the sacks. And really across the league, sacks are down. But they're getting in position to pressure the quarterback to maybe throw when he doesn't want to or earlier than he wants to, and maybe that'll turn into a turnover. The linebacking core, especially with the introduction of Reggie Stubblefield. He missed the first few games because he was still rehabbing his ACL injury from last year. Since he's been added into the lineup defensively, this defense has, taken another step forward. He's been all over the field, and you're going to notice him on Saturday for sure because he's been a guy who we came to know in Montreal being that dominant force in the secondaries, kind of that nickelback kind of, defender. Devin Versuk, the rookie middle linebacker, has taken his lumps here and there, but overall, I think has been a positive addition to that lineup. High motor guy, a pretty sure-handed tackler, and he's only learning as this season progresses. And a guy like Ray Wilburn has been really good as well, solid in his second season in the Canadian Football League and making some big tackles. So linebacking core is heads and tails better than what we had here last year. And if the secondary has their opportunities, they've proven that they can get a big turnover here and there. So defensively, it has been a huge step up from last season. I think each and every game this season, we've seen, a guy or two step up and make a huge play. So looking forward to seeing that on Saturday and, of course, beyond.
All right, we'll let you go. We'll wrap on this. Where and when can I set up Simone Lawrence's autograph session on Saturday with Rider fans before the game? Do we want to start at 10 and go till noon because of the crowd he's going to draw? Do we want to start earlier? How do we want to approach Simone and the Rider fans this weekend so they can interact and get together and rekindle that love affair that they've had for so many years?
I'm sure Simone would make all the time in the world for Rough Riders fans. We were talking about this actually the other day, and just the toughest places to play, or the most interesting places to play, and aside from Toronto, of course, for any Tiger-Cats player, which is just crazy. He did mention Saskatchewan because the fans in Regina, and we know they come from all over the province, they are just so hardcore, and he just was recounting how he had so much fun at Old Mosaic and, of course, New Mosaic, just interacting with the fans who would just throw all kinds of interesting barbs his way. So I'm sure the line would be long and maybe sometimes volatile in that line.